Welcome back to Yahoo Finance Live. Positive news from Moderna showing its COVID vaccine protects at least up to 6 months with more than 90% protection, making it the second vaccine to confirm such protection. But Moderna is already looking beyond that with clinical trials for a flu vaccine set to begin this year. Joining us now to discuss that and more is CEO Stéphane Bancel. Welcome back, Stéphane. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Good morning. So let's start off with that positive news about the protection. We kind of anticipated it based on the news out of Pfizer and BioNTech. So now that you see that 6 months protection, do you think that that variant-specific booster you're working on is still going to be needed, or are we going to just look at a regular booster?
So it's a bit too early to tell exactly what booster is going to be needed, but a booster is going to be needed. If you look at the efficacy, it's still 90% plus, which is, of course, wonderful. But you have a mixed bag, I would say, between people that are young and healthy and maybe 100% efficacy, and people that are older with one or several comorbidity factors. And then to your point is the variant. We do worry about the variants. As you know, the virus is evolving away from the original strain and so from the original vaccines. And we are worried especially about the one first identified in South Africa or in Brazil. And so we want just to be ready. We believe, especially people at high risk, should get a boost in the fall. And we want to make sure we have the best possible boost. We're currently in the clinic testing 3 strategies. The current vaccine as a boost, the South Africa strain, which is a 100% copy of that strain as a boost, and the strategy of a mix, which is a 50-50 mass ratio of a Pfizer vaccine and the South Africa vaccine together in a single dose as a boost. And we will get the clinical data very soon. Yesterday, we put online a manuscript for preclinical work. It shows that the mix boost shows the best performance with all the strains. But we'll have a clinical data soon because, as you know, it's already in the clinic since March.
Right. So looking at that, I know that, of course, you have all of this going on, but simultaneously, the news from Johnson & Johnson yesterday having to halt their vaccine certainly saw a boost in your shares. But has that translated or, in addition to AstraZeneca's hurdles, have you seen that translate into more orders globally?
So it is clear that with the launch of those vaccines, and as you know, we don't have for any of those vaccine years of data. Those are brand new vaccines because of the pandemic. The regulators and the companies are very careful. And so every time there are side effects reported, and we, like any other company, report side effects very regularly, talk to the FDA, to the CDC, is the regulatory agencies have to be very, very careful. Because as you know, we give vaccines to healthy people. And it's very important for the regulator to monitor that data, because when you go from 30,000 people in the phase 3, which is a very large phase 3, but to millions of people, yesterday we made a statement that we are not seeing so far, blood clot issue with Moderna. This is out of 64 million injections. That is a much bigger N than 30,000. And so I think it's very wise for the regulator to be careful. What is clear, I think, is you have countries now that are getting worried because you have some vaccine like ours at a 90+ efficacy rate. Some are already, in the 60s. So, of course, 90 is better than 60. And then you have this question about potential side effects. And so, indeed, governments around the world are placing a lot of phone calls to understand what's happening right now with our ability to supply more. But also the variant. I think people are starting to think about next fall, next winter. And people are worried about the variant. As you can see, the variant spreading in this country, but also in Europe, around the world. And what I worry deeply is the next 6 months. We're going to go into a wave where you see an increased number of cases around the world because the Southern Hemisphere is going into their fall and their winter. And in the Southern Hemisphere, a lot of people are immunocompromised, like HIV positive patients. And it is not surprising to epidemiologists that we have a new variant from Brazil, a new variant from South Africa. And think about it, this was during their summer when a lot of people were outside. So I really think that as you expand the number of people infected by this virus, in the South, we could have more variants of concern. But what Moderna is committed to do is to keep chasing them. If we believe we need to add to the South Africa boost another mRNA, we can do that. We have done already in the clinic up to 6 mRNA for other programs. And so we are very confident we can technically do that.
Well, talk to me about that global view that you have, because right now you've committed to producing up to 1 billion doses. You see potentially $18.5 billion in sales of the COVID vaccine. Meanwhile, you're also going to be applying for full licensure here in the US. How does that translate, especially with the backdrop of the discussion of the patent and the government's role in that and the need to vaccinate globally? What are you thinking about all that?
So the way I think about it is that 2021 is mostly called for. I mean, as you said, more than 18 billion of advanced purchase agreements signed already, many more discussions, but the discussions now are really turning to 2022. And governments being worried about boost. And as you can see, because of the different technology, the different efficacy rates, the different safety profile, this is things that the governments did not know a year ago. When the first order were placed by governments around the world, there was no efficacy data on no vaccines. And so you saw governments like the US or Europe building a portfolio. But what you see now is the countries have a good sense for efficacy, for safety profile, and for the company's ability to deliver or not to the manufacturing commitment. And so I really believe Moderna is very well positioned as we look into 22, where it's going to be a boost market with variants being really important to maintain that high efficacy so people do not get hospitalized.
Well, let's move on to some of the other things you're working on. You know that the flu vaccine is something that's of interest. You're looking at a combination with the flu and COVID, ideally. What is the likelihood that we're going to get there this year, and where are we in terms of clinical trials?
Yeah, so we're going to be in a clinic this year for flu. We should not anticipate to be able to go as fast as we went last year with COVID. As you know, the regulators and the companies did a lot of extraordinary things because of the pandemic. I don't think the FDA will even consider an EUA for a flu vaccine because there are flu vaccines available, and safety being very important for products like vaccines. We also, as a manufacturer, will not want to ask for an EUA for such a product. So it's going to take a tiny bit more time, but it's not going to take 5 years. And so our goal is to get very quickly the seasonal flu vaccine. And for me, the key point is going to be around efficacy. As you know, today, in a good year, current flu vaccines have around 60% efficacy. But in a bad year, it's down to 20 or 30%. A lot of people get hospitalized because there's not high efficacy vaccine. And also because a lot of people do not want to get those vaccines because they are known to be low efficacy. But we believe if we can bring a vaccine on the market at a 90% efficacy rate against flu, and especially if we can combine it, which we know we can technically, to the variant of concern for COVID every year, and that you have one shot where you can walk into your CVS, in the fall and get your shot and have a nice winter, not getting flu, not getting, COVID. I think that is a winning proposition. We can also add other ones. This morning, one of the big news is around RSV, respiratory syncytial virus. This is the number 2 cause of hospitalization in the US in 2019 for respiratory virus. There's no vaccine on the market. What did we show this morning? We showed in human trials an 11x increase in neutralizing antibodies. And so we believe this is also another product that has a very high chance of getting to the finish line. We could also combine it, and you could think about a product, especially for adults and the elderly, that has all the virus that really could lead to hospitalization. And with that, really has a big impact on healthcare. And we think this could be many billions of annual sales for this product.
No doubts. Definitely the COVID vaccine has set the tone for mRNA technology. We'll have to leave it there. Stéphane Bancel, CEO of Moderna, thank you so much for joining me today.